So a very good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ramya Karnam, Director Sales at SuneraTech Technologies. And thank you all for joining with us today for the webinar on the topic Salesforce Test Automation, Intelligent and Continuous Testing for your CRM and CX applications presented by SuneraTech Technologies. And I'll be moderating today's webinar. Audience will be on mute throughout and the questions will be taken up in the last 10 minutes. So please post your questions in the Q&A section whenever you have one. So we'll quickly start off with the introductions of the speakers for today's webinar. So our first speaker is Lavanya Sallagundla, who is the Vice President, Head of Quality Engineering and Cloud Tester Business Head, carrying more than 20 years of experience and is a thought leader in the quality engineering space. Our next speaker is Sharath Raghunath, who is the Vice President leading the Salesforce CRM CX practice at SuneraTech Technologies and has over 25 plus years of experience in the CRM transformations, working with various industries like BFSI, healthcare, automotive, retail, and other industries. And our next speaker for today's webinar is Kumar G, Senior Manager and is part of the Salesforce COE team at SuneraTech Technologies. And he carries about 16 plus years of experience in consulting delivery, COE, CX practice enablement, and leads and has also led global enterprise implementations in different industries. So without further ado, let's begin the webinar. Over to you, Lavanya.
Thank you, Ramya. Thanks everyone for joining. So let's start with what are some of the current trends and challenges that customers are facing when it comes to their Salesforce CRM testing. So Gartner says that by 2025, 70% of new applications developed by enterprises will be low code or no code. What this means is that the speed with which applications are getting implemented, it's a lot more configuration versus actually doing development using code and all. Requires you to do faster releases, a lot more testing. A lot of these configurations are being done by the users because it's low touch, low code systems now, requiring that the testing becomes more complicated, and doing manual testing will slow down things. So in order for you to not compromise on quality, when you're looking at a lot of this low code, no code technologies, gearing up by leveraging automation becomes key. One of the reports for the state of Salesforce testing has documented that up to almost 92% of customers are experiencing critical issues annually in production when they go into production with these releases on average. Because without enough time for planning, you're sacrificing quality for speed, right? So you don't want to be one of those in one of those categories. This seems to be something that with the whole paradigm shift of SaaS, paradigm shift of low code, no code, low touch IT and all, having the ability to continuously provide releases without compromising on quality requires looking at automation as a key aspect. So lack of testing is one of the biggest risks that organizations are facing when they're going through the whole digital transformation. And according to a lot of reports, defects found in production costs you almost 640 times versus defects found during requirements phase versus testing phase versus UAT phases, right? So this kind of also lets you think about not only speed and quality, but the cost aspect of it as well. To find a defect and fix a defect in production is 640 times more expensive versus shifting left and identifying these issues as early as possible. Right? So what are the different options available for customers in the market, right? So obviously you could continue to test manually, but that is one, time consuming, coverage might not be comprehensive. You're just probably running some tests based on the time you have. Also with continuous changes coming in from your cloud providers like Salesforce and others, you probably don't have ability to look at these new features. Are you leveraging the new features effectively? Are you training the team members to use the new features effectively and all, right? So you're taking away time from things that are important versus doing testing, which really does not add a lot of value. And also it takes a lot more time to run these tests manually as well. The second option is building your own automation solutions. You can get open source tools, or you can license any commercial tools that are available, build a framework, find resources who actually know how to use these tools effectively, spend 3 to 6 months to get automation up and running. But one of the challenges that a lot of clients face with this particular option is, one, finding the skill set, people who actually are able to use these tools effectively. Second is maintenance. Even if you're automating these tests, maintenance becomes a challenge, especially for dynamic applications like Salesforce that has dynamic tags and all. It becomes a challenge when it comes to maintenance. So usually, even if you have automated it, you fall back on doing things manually. Or some other challenges, whether this tool is going to work in your end-to-end environment. Right? If you have Salesforce is not living in isolation, Salesforce is going to be interfacing with other systems, upstream, downstream. Are you able to actually run an end-to-end test with the tool that you have picked? Otherwise, you're probably just testing Salesforce and not actually doing what it happens in the real world. Right? So those are some of the things to consider when you're looking at building your own solution using tools in the market. Or the other option is you could subscribe to automated testing as a service, where you're kind of providing the accountability to a partner and pay based on subscription and consumption instead of purchasing a tool or looking at infrastructure or looking at how many resources you need and things like that. So that you can look at completely having somebody accountable for it and pay for the outcome versus tools or resources or infrastructure and things like that. These are some of the options that are available in the market that you could consider when it comes to testing of these applications. So now I'll hand it over to Sharath to talk more about customer experience and what challenges that clients are actually facing in Salesforce testing. Sharath?
Yeah. Thanks, Lavanya. Good afternoon to everybody. See, when we talk about customer experience, the customer can be either an internal customer or an external customer. So whenever you have testing, right, what is the need for testing? A person using the application, a customer using an application, should be able to navigate through the application easily and get satisfaction by using the application and enrich his user experience. So for that, as part of testing, we always do testing in terms of navigation through different screens or tabs, or clicking on the links, or clicking on a button to take you to different pages. That is one of the aspects of testing, in addition to the testing that we do for other functionalities like unit testing, system testing, regression testing, smoke testing, etc. So customer experience is an extremely important aspect, because even irrespective of whether you use an application or you're testing an application, to ensure that your overall experience of the application is you are satisfied using the app. So that's why you need connected data, connected content, intelligence in terms of analytics, and finally all this clubbed together. When data is connected, when content is connected, when there is intelligence, the whole experience of the customer is enriched, and the customer is satisfied irrespective of what channel he uses, and the omni-channel becomes very, very effective. So that is why CX becomes a very important component, not necessarily from an application standpoint, but testing, to ensure that at the end, when the application is tested, the customer experience is enriched and you are satisfied using the application. So coming to the challenges that we face in Salesforce testing. So we understood what is customer experience, which is an important aspect of testing in terms of user interface navigation. Now coming to the challenges that we face in Salesforce testing. Salesforce has got 3 releases, summer, winter, and spring. So in these releases, you have various changes to the product itself in terms of its life cycle, in terms of its process changes, in terms of certain functionalities being revised, and so on. So due to this challenges, right? So when we talk about the test cases, they may fail in certain cases when it's scripted or there's a lot of code involved. So that is where the release, to incorporate these challenges in release, one of the important aspects to ensure that you adhere to these changes in the release. Complex customizations. So that is, we have configurations and customization. So when a lot of customizations happen within the Salesforce environment, there is change in Visual Force, the code Apex triggers, and also the test script should be in a position to cater to all these customizations and complex testing. So this is one of the challenges that we face in Salesforce. And with Lightning, there are a lot of dynamic elements that keep on changing in terms of the user interface, with a lot of components getting added, removed. So other thing is table-heavy design platform. What does it mean? It means that Salesforce, everything, the data is arranged in terms of rows and columns. So to ensure that there is sufficient data validation, there's a challenge in terms of validating this data, because the design of Salesforce is in the form of rows and columns. And when testing, people often lack experience in terms of the Salesforce technical aspects as well in terms of testing. So that is one of the challenges we face in the testing aspect. And role-based access. Role-based access is typically when you navigate through different cases from one system to another system, you could face challenges in terms of not being able to see data, not able to see the screens across various applications because of restrictions and security layers that are. So other challenges are manual tests, because you have to repeatedly make changes to the manual test cases. You have to rewrite the regression test case. You have to rewrite the unit test cases or the system test cases, rerun the regression test cases. So which can be time consuming, and it may eat up the productivity of the people. So these are the different challenges that you face in the Salesforce testing, and also different integrations that can happen with other applications from Salesforce, right? You need end-to-end integration testing from Salesforce to another application, say an Oracle ERP application, the handshake that happens. So you can face a challenge there. And because of all this, the productivity is reduced, and you spend a lot of time in documenting and creating dashboards where you show the reporting aspects of the testing, as how many test cases passed, how many test cases failed, how many are pending to be tested, and so on. So you spend more time because everything is manual. So a typical scenario where you can have a Salesforce test automation. So all these manual test cases that we discussed can be avoided if you have a digital test automation platform in place. So a typical scenario could be, nurturing a lead and converting it into an opportunity cycle. So an automation test case is very, very important, where instead of you doing all these different steps manually, like creating the lead and qualifying the lead, doing lead profiling, lead scoring, and then converting the leads into an opportunity, then associating it with the contact, then going through the different status of the opportunity, then before it comes to closure, you can have this entire process from the lead to the opportunity conversion as an automated test case. So that will help you, in saving time and also increasing the user productivity. Some of the key focus areas in the Salesforce test automation are when to test, what to test, who will be testing it, and where it will be tested, and testing beyond the obvious, and how you will test it. So when do you test? Typically, you will test when there is a change management. For example, in the life cycle, or you have releases happening in terms of various functionalities. You do testing in terms of either system testing, integration testing, regression testing, smoke testing, load testing, different types of testing that you can have. And when there are critical updates or patches that are applied, you want to see whether the application is passing through the security layer or security patches. So that time you decide that you want to test. So who will be testing this? Different type of skill set people who are product owners, who are system engineers, who are application designers, who are DevOps people, where they are into release management in terms of different versions of the applications that are getting into from the development to the production instances. So those are the people who will be doing all these changes to the to the environment and to the releases. So where will you typically test this? You will test this, as I told you, during either as a developer who does unit test cases, or the system test cases, end-to-end integration test cases, regression test cases, smoke test, load testing. So different places where you can actually do the testing. So what will they be testing on? Either on the sandbox, or they will be doing a release testing based on the release. And when there is any change in the business process, or when there is change in the relational database design, when new columns have been added, whether they appear in the user interface. So in terms of the changes in the database layer itself, so we do testing to see whether they're appearing in the front end of the user interface layer. In addition to all this testing, right, we do, as I told you, the user interface is very, very important from the customer experience standpoint, as I explained in the beginning, where we do all this testing, and then from the application functionality, we do testing in terms of whether the user interface is appearing as what is needed, whether the correct what do you say, the components, the visual components are appearing as it is through in different browsers. For IE it may appear differently, in Chrome it may appear differently, in Mozilla Firefox it may appear differently. So different people use different types of browsers, and the components need to be rendered correctly in these different types of browsers. So we test beyond the obvious. And how do we test? As I told you, different test cases in terms of having automation test cases. We can have the reports on Slack, which is typically, a collaboration tool which Salesforce acquired, where you can put reports on the testing and everybody can see what is the test status. And then you can have automation on the developer sandboxes, and also you can ensure that new test cases are automated. So this is a brief about why we need customer experience and what are the key challenges, how you can use digital automation as a scenario for automating this manual test cases, and focus areas where the Salesforce testing is needed. So now I hand it over to my colleague, Kumar, who will take you through a customer success story on the digital automation. Over to you, Kumar.
Sure, thanks. Hey, hi, everyone. So I would like to, showcase the case study what we have recent days we have implemented our digital test automation. So Enersys is a stored energy system and technology provider for industrial applications. So they manufacture and distribute power batteries and battery chargers and power equipment. So they have different Salesforce applications like sales and service and Pardot for marketing. And they have multiple instances. They have around 5 to 6 instances for different regions and different business lines. So the key challenges were inadequate test coverage due to a lot of manual effort, and which has direct impact on the testing timelines, and their business processes spanning between multiple systems, parties, and technologies. Has the end-to-end customer journey would be involved, front office like CRM and the back office like ERP, and the complexity of testing testing customizations and integrations, where one of the global instance has been heavily customized with Visual Force components and Aura components. And due to manual release validation by business and the IT, the new feature adoption is very slow. So these are all the key challenges. So as a solution to overcome all these challenges, we leveraged our digital test automation suite and automated 90% of test cases. And we have published web-based access of dashboards and testing artifacts and the screenshots and all those, and automated the test case validation for various Salesforce releases. Apart from Salesforce seasonal releases, we also enable for the change management and build the entire test regression suite with the key business processes, and which were able to execute for every release, right? And we onboarded and updated the test cases for various scenarios. For change management, for every 2 weeks of sprint releases, we're able to update the new test cases in less than couple of hours. So this is the solution, and the benefits what we have seen as part of this test automation. So 70% of less efforts to build and maintain the test cases compared to what they were spending in the manual test, and execute test cases with a click of button, where really business users are really happy with that, and compliance with internal and external audit. And the key important thing is business people able to spend more time on the application, which resulted increased agility in adapting to the change. So that's the quick overview of the case study.
Thank you, Kumar.
Yeah, over to you, Lavanya.
Yeah, so we've talked about the whole automation and how Salesforce customers are leveraging automation from a testing standpoint, right? But want to talk a little bit more about how this whole new age systems where when you're going through digital transformation, you might have cloud applications. Cloud could be cloud SaaS, cloud could be any extension using PaaS, or you have native cloud applications that are being hosted on the cloud, or you might have a data related journey that you're undertaking where you're setting up data warehouses, data lakes, and leveraging reporting and data driven decision making, and all, which requires you to have data assurance in place to make sure that you are able to trust the reports that are getting generated, so that the users are able to use the reports effectively. Or you might be modernizing your applications, or you might be leveraging in emerging technologies like implementing IoT based solutions, or blockchain based solutions, or AI ML based solutions, or RPA based solutions, and things like that, requiring you to also leverage continuous quality automation. So we are looking at this more holistically for a lot of our customers when they're undertaking this whole digital transformation journey. The struggle with the digital transformation is, how do you look at all these different areas of transformation? How do you make sure you have a digital assurance when it comes to digital assurance? It's not just test automation. Automation is one pillar of it, where you're able to do the functional automation, or you're able to shift left and do API level automation, um, uh, or you want to do end-to-end system automation to make sure that your applications are interacting with each other and the data is flowing as it's supposed to flow, the way it happens in production. So automation could be one component where you are looking at it at from a continuous testing, continuous quality standpoint. But then there are other pillars like performance. Performance is another key aspect from an application standpoint, where the users don't have, if the application is not performing as expected, then the users will not be happy using it, whether it's your internal users or external users. How do you make performance more real time, predictable, versus more reactive, where if somebody complains about performance, then you're going and taking a look at it. Same thing with security. With a lot of the move to cloud, in terms of having the security, how do you ensure that you're creating different roles in your applications, role-based security, as well as are you opening yourself up to attacks? Are you vulnerable on your applications, right? So how do you ensure that from a security standpoint, your applications are secure? And audits become another key aspect. A lot of organizations go through either internal audits or external audits. How do you make audits more real time versus spending a lot of time documenting what has been changed, what has been tested, is it working as expected? And gearing up for audits takes away a lot of time from key resources. How do you make audit more real time? How can you automate the whole audit process so that it's all available for auditors and you don't have to keep manually supporting that? And with all this low code, low touch, even users are expecting that IT becomes low touch. There's a lot more self-service availability, right? So these are some of the 5 pillars that organizations are looking at when it comes to digital assurance, when they're going through the whole digital transformation process. So how do you achieve this continuous digital assurance, right? So there are, these are the 4 main components, right? You've got your cloud SaaS, where it's all controlled by somebody else like Salesforce or other SaaS companies, where it's their infrastructure, it's their release cycles. They determine what goes into a release, they determine when it goes into a release, and it's not easy for you to roll back once it goes in, right? It's a huge paradigm shift, but it's also a low hanging fruit when it comes to setting up continuous automation, continuous quality, continuous testing, right? So, because a lot of these packaged applications have functionality that is common. You might customize it to some extent, but you can still have people who have experience, like people like Kumar and Sharath, who's been working in these environments, and they know a lot of these flows already. So it's easier to have a lot of reusable assets. You can kind of configure these reusable assets and get automation up and running in weeks versus months. Then you've got your custom packaged applications. You could have your legacy systems like SAP or EBS or PeopleSoft and things like that. You could have custom applications that could be hosted on the cloud or that could be hosted on-prem. You can have mobile applications that needs to be tested, or any other systems, right? Which is this particular quadrant, it's more controlled by you. You have control on when it goes into a release. It's your infrastructure, your team manages it, right? So that's another pillar where you can look at how do you continuously automate. If you're going through agile DevOps transformation, if you want more frequent releases, then how do you get there? By leveraging automation. Then you've got your integrations. A lot of applications integrate with each other. It could be API based integration. You might be writing microservices, or you might have some third party integration that you're interfacing with. Plus, integrations could be different tools that you're bringing to the table as part of your agile DevOps transformation. And there are so many different toolkits available. Are you able to integrate with each of those tools seamlessly, so that the respective of where you run the test, when you run the test, all the information is available at a centralized place where people are able to look at the reports, right? And then you've got the data and analytics, making sure that there is data assurance. It's not garbage in, garbage out kind of a situation. How do you ensure that you're leveraging automation in that aspect as well? So these are 4 key areas and components where you can look at leveraging the whole continuous digital assurance, setting up a digital assurance lab so that it's kind of looking at it holistically across all the pillars of your digital transformation, versus one application at a time, where you get a tool for one application, but it doesn't work for the other systems, or it doesn't integrate well with other when you have to do end-to-end data validation and things like that. Okay. So how does this differ in terms of your traditional testing versus when you're looking at it more from a digital assurance standpoint? Right. So when you're doing traditional testing, typically your release time or testing time could be somewhere between 2 weeks to 3 months. But when you move to digital assurance, when you're setting it up this way, you can release hourly, you can release weekly, you can release, so you can increase the speed without compromising on the quality. Second is testing support. Traditionally, it's more dependent on people, but you can move it more towards self-service, low-touch IT, right? So that the teams are more focused on enabling businesses with the new functionality and new features, versus just running the test manually. Audits can be more real time versus doing things manually. Security could be continuous versus ad hoc. Performance could be more predictive versus being reactive, right? Like for example, in Cloud Tester, we are able to actually track performance both at a transaction level as well as at if you have to run it at a load and performance level, so that you're continuously predicting what is being expected, and you can run the reports to see where there are gaps in terms of, are you seeing slowdown in performance at a transaction level? Are you seeing slowdown in performance when you're running it, when you're putting load on the system, stress on the system, and things like that, right? So you kind of look at it more holistically, so that it's not an application level, just automation tool that you're looking at. So all those digital assurance we've been providing, powered by a platform Cloud Tester. A lot of Fortune 500 companies and enterprises that are currently leveraging this platform for their digital assurance and automation testing needs. This is just a quick representative list. So let me just show a quick demo of the platform so you get an idea on how the platform looks and some of the things that you're able to do within the platform. So this is just a login screen. And usually when you log in, you've got a dashboard. The dashboard where you can look at what is the status, when you execute the test, what is the execution status. You can track defects, development and whatnot. And you can also dig into more details to see what stage each test cases are. If you want to look at more details in terms of what test cases are in progress, what are completed and all, you can dig down into details as well. Let me just pull up a quick Salesforce test case here. So this is a Salesforce test. When you set it up, the setup is pretty straightforward. You capture and configure a transaction, and the platform auto generates documentation as well. So if I click on documentation, you get a test case documentation that has complete details on what are the steps that you're performing, with screenshots. So you can even use this for job aids or training purposes as well. And you can keep up with this documentation as the application is continuously going through changes. So you can see next time when you generate the document, you will have the most latest version of the document, right? So it's completely, it's the documentation helps a lot. If tomorrow somebody leaves the organization, you don't have to worry about have all the latest changes been documented or not. So that's one key deliverable that you get. And then anytime a test gets run, you have a run history, when the test got executed, how long it took to execute it, which environment, whether it's passed or failed. And you can have more detailed results as well. If there are any failed steps, you see that up front. So you don't have to scroll through the whole thing. Otherwise, you have again very detailed results that is downloadable as well. So in this situation, once you set up these automated tests, even if the tests are not being run manually, the users, if it will take some time for them to give up that wanting to do things manually, this tremendously help them into transitioning into automation, because they can still look at the results, which are fairly detailed with screenshots and all, to review and sign off. Right, so that's, and all this is configurable as well, what level of detail you want in terms of screenshots, what kind of validations we want to add. If auditors are looking for a particular type of documentation, you could set that up, and every time you run the test, you'll get that level of detailed documentation. So it's all configurable, so it makes it easy. And also, if you want to run the same test with different data permutations, you could do that as well. The platform has the ability to automate the data as well, parameterize the data. If needed, we can connect to the database and fetch the information. We can upload an Excel or CSV file with different data permutations, so that you can kind of iterate it with single test, but with different permutations of data as well. So you can have more coverage with automation without having to pick and choose what you want to run as part of the testing as well, right? And in case you want to run tests that are more end-to-end, where you want to run the first test in Salesforce, then you want to go to SAP, or you want to go to Oracle Fusion or Microsoft Dynamics or any custom application, you can kind of group the test cases. You can pull the test cases and run these tests sequentially as well. And these tests doesn't have to be, like I said, in the same system. So you can kind of set them up, configure them, and then you can just kind of pull them together and group them and run these tests as needed, right? Like I can pull this group together, then these will run in sequence by passing along data from one test to the other test. If I want, I can add more test cases into this, so that you kind of have the ability to create different test permutations and run them, whether you want to run them in parallel, you can run them in parallel. If you want to run them in sequence, you can run them in sequence. And these each component could be a different application. Each component could be it could be an integration. So this kind of gives you the ability to set up the tests and then trigger them, and they run behind the scenes without you having to worry about them, right? So that's another key aspect when you're looking at your whole digital transformation. When you're looking at platforms that are going to enable continuous testing, continuous quality, you need to look at things that can do all aspects of it, not just automation. And automation also, is it doing only for one application? Can it support all different applications? How quickly can I set up automation? And how easy it is to maintain, right? Setting up automation is one time, but then are you able to keep up with the changes, the frequency of the changes? Are your tests breaking down every time a small change happens on the application? And are you able to run these tests like it happens in real world, across systems, across integrations? Are you looking at performance as a key parameter? Are you able to do security? Are you able to make sure that all different roles that you've configured, you're able to make sure there is no security breakdown that is happening? Are you able to do audit supports, things like that, right? So all these become important aspects, because it all adds up when it comes to the speed with which things have to be done, and what the business users are expecting, or what the organizations are expecting from a speed standpoint. And all these tests, then again, now if you're implementing DevOps and continuous testing, are you able to replicate this information in your as your DevOps or in your Jenkins or other continuous integration tools? Are you able to replicate the test defects or the results in the tool that you already have in place, right? All that integration, the plumbing becomes important as well when it comes to setting up these things, right? So those are some of the things that the platform already comes with. We usually set up the plumbing for clients as a shift left a thing, so that by the time you get started, you've got everything ready. Plumbing is in place. You can start looking at which applications you want to start with. Is it Salesforce? You can start with Salesforce. Then you can look at what is the next wave of applications you want to automate. Can you simultaneously look at automating the performance part of it? Can you look at the data assurance? Can you look at, are there any security vulnerabilities that you have in place that you need to take into account, and all that, right? So you can kind of look at it, from a holistic standpoint and look at it from your whole journey versus application by application journey as well, right? So that's just a quick demo. Just get back to this and see if there are any questions that we could answer at this time.
Few questions. So the first one is, can Cloud Tester integrate with DevOps tools?
Yes, we can integrate with the DevOps tools. You can trigger the test from Cloud Tester, or you can trigger the test from other from your continuous integration tools as well. So that integration, that plumbing is available already.
Okay. Another question is, will you be able to support for weekly and bi-weekly releases other than the Salesforce major releases?
Absolutely. Salesforce is one of the applications a lot of our clients go through frequent changes, apart from the 3 releases that Salesforce itself provides, because again, because it's easily configurable, and also a lot of clients continuously make the changes, and we are continuously supporting through automation.
Okay. What are the various engagement and pricing models?
Good question. So we do have different models. We do have subscription consumption based models. We also have continuous testing support models, where we do initial setup and then we can continuously support these hourly, monthly, quarterly, or weekly, bi-weekly releases, right? So we do have multiple models, and we can definitely work with you to provide the model that works best for your organization. But all of them are going to be more outcome based. We don't charge for tool licenses or infrastructure or resources or anything like that. It's completely outcome based solution pricing.
There's another question. So what are the unique features of Cloud Tester when compared to other tools in the market?
Like I said, we're looking at it as more holistically. It is a single platform, will support all different types of applications, all types of integrations, performance, audit, and you can set up these automated tests in the matter of weeks. It doesn't take months, and it is scriptless and low touch, so that the scalability is easy. Irrespective of the application under test, you are able to set up these automated tests much faster. And like I said, we're looking at it holistically, and enabling customers through the digital transformation journey, versus looking at it as a single application test automation tool. And we provide it as complete service as well.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of the questions. Well, thank you so much, Lavanya, Sharath, and Kumar. And thank you all for the attendees for your time today. And we hope it has been an insightful session to you. We appreciate it, and we'll share the recording of this webinar and we'll post it on our website also on www.suneratech.com, and we'll also be sharing the presentation deck and the webinar recording with you all over an email too. Thanks everyone, and have a good day.